But yeah, we'll talk more about Oppressor on a future stream, and we will get it up for people to be able to play. But really, the interesting thing is Gunday is the track that Jack was on. So yeah, so Jack has done a lot of work in VR. We think VR is this incredibly just untapped piece of territory. It's an expansive frontier essentially that it doesn't really have all that much exciting going on in it, which is completely like counter to the exciting potential of that frontier. So let's bring up, yeah, we can't play, we've got a trailer of this game, which we can't play with audio because the people at Twitch, they're imps. The people at Twitch are devilish imps. And they will not, yeah, Michael gets it. On a prototype, we did a prototype stream and we used one of the banned words to describe Twitch staff, I think in like episode 2. In our second test stream, and it's like, ooh, we're gonna get banned so quick. But no, they're devilish imps. Nothing else. I would never call them one of those words. So we'll play this trailer. Hang on, let me bring it up. Here we go. And Jack, how about you? While this is playing, how about you? Well, I say while it's playing. Hang on, let me remove this from the top. Oh no, it's playing. Oh no. Here we go. Right, that should be. Yep, can we see that?
Yeah, we can see that, yeah.
Cool. Okay, how about you describe what we're looking at with Gunday Driver?
Okay, so this is Gunday. Gunday Driver, as you can see. It's a VR driving and shooting game. Basically, you're playing as like a vigilante, like a Charles Bronson type character who's had enough. He's mysterious past. He was a former like stuntman, former special forces guy. And he lives in this city, which is like a San Francisco-esque city, which is just overrun with crime, and he's had enough, and he's going to go on a road rampage. And this is basically what you see. And now it's you sit in the driver's seat, you steer, you shoot things, you drink beer to get your health back, you throw grenades, you shoot dudes, you get points for how well you do, and the stuff you do. You know, for example, if you go off a ramp and shoot someone, if you shoot someone like over your shoulder or you shoot someone far away, you get points for destruction, and that translates into cash, which then you can go to a car shop or a gun shop and upgrade your dude and do it all again and beat your high score. This has evolved though from what you're seeing here. This is like the sort of concept prototype that I was building since March to sort of test proof of concept everything out and make sure that it's all playable and doesn't make people motion sick. But since then we decided to take this concept and evolve it into something much bigger.
Well, let's talk a bit about that. So, okay. How much more is of the trailer?
You're about halfway through.
Yeah.
Just keep playing and
we'll keep playing it while we're talking about it. So, the reason why we were thinking let's just keep this as a guy in a car, or one of the reasons was cost. That if we just make this a sort of point A to point B, nice tight sort of 4-5 minute thrill ride levels where you sort of funneled down this pathway, you've got enemies to shoot. That's it's an easy concept to understand. And that should be executable with a relatively modest game budget. And budgets in the VR field are kind of hard to... It's hard to get, like... You don't see the kind of funding in VR that you see with, like, screen-based gaming because there just isn't the addressable market yet to justify, like, massive, like, 7-digit figure budgets. We were trying to make this thing nice and tight and small so that whoever we go to ask for money from is going to say yes, and they're not going to turn around and go, hey, you're trying to make something which is going to take like 5 years to make, fuck that. So it all kind of came to a head at Develop. Yeah, so you worked on that from about March to July, and Michael was working on Oppressor, and we still had Smashpunks, and we went around and talked to a whole bunch of people about, hey, we're this new startup business, but we've got plenty of skin in the game, plenty of experience, and we've got these awesome experiences. And immediately we were rubbing up, we were getting the kind of this strange kind of like dual experience of people going, wow, this is awesome, that looks great, that looks cool, but when we started talking figures and money and all that kind of stuff, immediately the conversations became depressing. The people did not want to spend that much money, or even the subject matter of the games, being told like, hey, if you've got a game where you're driving around running people over and shooting them, that's like a terrorist simulator, and people are going to be really upset by that, and it's going to be hard to get funding for something like that. And in our minds, we're like, well, that's what makes games awesome, right? Is like the power trip, power fantasies, being able to do shit that you can't do in real life, like run people over. while drinking beer. Like, that's funny, that's awesome, and it's not real, we're not advocating for it. But on many fronts, it was becoming very quickly apparent that, look, if we want to sign up with somebody on this, that if we're going to basically sign up with a publisher, obviously there's going to be strings attached. We're going to have really tight deadlines. If there are any kind of creative differences, we're obviously going to come out like not on top with something like that. And even though we were trying to really get the budget and costs down, people were still kind of responding to it as like, no, we need this cheaper. And it was all just sort of creating a general sense of, certainly in myself, like a sense of anxiety about how it is that we're going to move forwards, because, you know, this is a space this is a process that I've been through before, and the more we talked to publishers and funders, the more it became apparent like how much I specifically do not want to go down that pathway again, because we don't want our creative vision compromised. If we have someone funding the game, then they're going to reap all the rewards, and if there are any disagreements, if anything happens, if there are any bumps in the road, just like in the past, we're the ones who are going to have to pay for it. And the way that that's manifest in the past is us paying for it for like years. So I think Develop was sort of a really, and that was in what, mid-July. That event was very interesting because it was like very positive and very negative information coming from the same, basically from the same source. And that then led to us we basically just started talking about like, well, okay, what does moving forwards without a publisher look like, or a funder? And by this point, we should say the VC deal had just fallen through as well. We found out just before Develop that they basically gone under, and it was like, okay, so that's that fucked. Awesome. Yeah, we didn't have a deal with them, but as Jack said, it's like, look, if we got the deal a month prior or 2 months prior, then we'd be even more screwed. And it's like, right, so what are we doing here? Why are we making these kind of small experiences for people who, you know, let's just be real for a second, like, publishers are not in it for the love of the game. They don't care the way that we care about what it is that we're doing. And that just comes across so obviously when you start talking to them about numbers. It's very depressing. It's extremely depressing, and there's a whole lot we can talk about on that front, and we will in future episodes. But for now, we'll just put it as, look, we want to be independent, and we want to be a publisher. We want to publish our own games, we want to publish other people's games. And if you're going to go ahead and sign a deal which is, you know, 80-20 in a publisher's favour, you're never going to make enough money to be able to have, because that's the kind of deals that we've had in the past, you're not going to be able to make enough money to be able to do that yourself, or if you do, it's going to be under extreme duress. And every step of the way, they're going to have complete control over what you say, what you do, what you create. So we have to choose another pathway, and we've obviously experimented with that in the past with Smashpunks doing a Patreon and whatnot, and trying to raise money from the people. And there are a ton of examples of that working out there, not just in the past, but right now. There's tons of games that are funded through Patreon, through Kickstarter, through Early Access. And when we looked specifically in the VR field, we went, holy shit, like the top 75% performing VR titles are all like independent or were formerly independent developers who were able to raise their money from the community and then were, you know, bought out by Meta or whoever. But still, the majority of the top performing games there are independent, and we very quickly figured out it's because the people with money don't want to take risks. They want the same thing. This is why battle royales have exploded over the past decade, because that formula works, and it's just, oh, could we do that, but it's like Call of Duty, or oh, could we do that, but it's got vampires in it, or could we do that, etc., etc. Hell, I mean, there's a fucking Halo battle royale apparently about to come out, and it's like, is Halo Infinite's problem that it lacks a battle royale feature, or that the game is terrible? Doesn't matter. Battle royales make money, so let's do that. And so we're looking at things like Gunday and going, well, this is really cool, but we could do a hell of a lot more with it. And if we were calling the shots, then there'd be no one to tell us, you can't do that because it's like me, and you can't have drink driving because that would affect age ratings and affect our bottom line. and all this shit. So we had I think, Jack, was it August? I think when I asked so I was driving around in Gunday, having a great time, but there was a point where, like, I just decided to start driving in the wrong direction and driving around the streets. And I think I asked you to put in, I was like, could we put like a handbrake in? Could we come to a stop? That would be kind of cool. And you did that, and it was awesome. And then, sort of jokingly, it was like, well, wouldn't it be great if you could, like, get out and walk around and, like, shoot people in the face? That would be even better, right? Like, to be able to drive around in a car and run around, wouldn't that be awesome? So we just started doing that, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the original idea for Gunday, and the reason why I started to prototype it, was it theoretically could be a very simple, like, arcade game. The original idea was you would just be on a freeway and you would steer basically to just change lanes, like an infinite runner or something. You know, you wouldn't be doing U-turns. You wouldn't be going back the way you came. You would just be steering left and right and going off ramps and stuff. And I built a prototype level that was essentially that, and it worked pretty well. And I was very happy that worked. And I thought, okay, this could be the game. You know, don't need to worry about braking or accelerating. Maybe when you hit something, you slow down, and when you the idea was that it was essentially an infinite runner that you steer left and right and shot things. So it was quite an achievable game that we could build basically with a very small team. But that was the mindset that was in us, was like, if we had 10 months to build a VR game, this would be it. We could achieve this.
But then yeah, and then we're looking at all these other studios who are similar to us, small time or from small humble beginnings, you know, 1, 2, 3 man development teams. And they've decided to set out and do something that's truly not. They're not going out and thinking about budget. They're thinking about what's best for gamers. How do we put gamers first? How do we make stuff that pushes the boundaries of gaming? And we can get more into this later. But like, you know, we really do think that gaming has declined significantly over the past decade to a point that it's utterly depressing. Yes, there are the occasional games that do great, but on the whole, things have just slid down into. You know, we're dealing with rehashes, remakes, terrible ports, massively hyped games that end up disappointing. And we're sat here thinking, how can we make a game in 10 months and basically just squeeze something out for the sake of a publisher who doesn't give a shit about gaming in the first place, not spending as much money? And yet there's all these other teams doing really exciting, expansive, big picture thinking and executing on it. And how are they doing that? It's one, they're putting something out that's interesting, building a community around that, and figuring out how to monetize in an ethical and expansive way. So around the time that Jack started making this new prototype, transitioning from Gunday Driver to just Gunday, we started thinking about stuff like this. Like, what if we did a show? What if we talked openly and honestly, instead of like every other game dev, pretending to have the right opinions and not saying what they think for fear of getting cancelled and fear of not being able to stay in the tent, stay in the club, be able to get publishing deals and get the money. Instead, what if we were just open and honest about who we are and what we want, and make the kind of games that we want to make, and we'll figure out how to fund that as we go. Because if you want to make a massive game, or even things like Gunday Driver, then you need £1 million. But we don't need that was really the big realization for us, was we don't need £1 million right now. And that £1 million comes with strings attached that we've tried before and we did not like, and it actually spelled the doom of us. What happens if we make something that's really interesting and exciting, and we're able to raise a couple of grand for a month? That seems like a much more feasible way of moving forwards, and when we can grow that, we can add on layers and layers.